Okay, good afternoon students. Today here I will discuss about the syllabus for CUET undergraduate. CUET for undergraduate. So what happened here? Basically the design or pattern of the questions are MCQ and 50 numbers of questions are given there. Out of 50 you need to attempt 40 number of questions. So 50 number of question, each questions carry 5 marks. And this is how there will be total score of 200. But if you commit any mistake, then 1 marks will be deducted. This is the pattern of the question paper of CUET and economics. Now, main thing is that total number of questions here asked, that is 50, and you have to attempt 40 numbers of question, and each questions carry 5 marks, and for committing one mistakes you will be 1 marks will be deducted. Now what is the syllabus? Let's see to know about the syllabus. What is actually the syllabus of CUET? So there are major 3 areas questions are coming. First areas is elementary micro or introduction to microeconomics, introduction to microeconomics. This is one part, one area. Another is introduction to macroeconomics. Another important part from where questions come, Indian economic development. Indian economic development. Now let's see, so what are the units we need to follow here. So under introduction to microeconomics, there is a one unit, unit 1, which is basically talk about what is microeconomics. What is microeconomics? What is microeconomics? So unit 1 deals with microeconomics. What is microeconomics? Second is central problems. This is one central problem. Central problem of economics. And unit 2, there are only 2 units are required in micro part. So unit 2 is consumer behavior. One is consumer behavior and demand. Consumer behavior and demand. This is one part. And another part is consumer behavior. We understand meaning. We have to understand meaning and attainment of equilibrium. Attainment of equilibrium. How equilibrium is attained. So equilibrium through utility approach. Through utility approach. One and 2 commodities case. This is unit 2, and next is demand. Next is we need to understand the chapter of demand, market demand, determinants of demand, determinants of demand, demand schedule, and here I am writing demand schedule, demand curve, movement along and shift in the demand curve, price elasticity of demand, measurement of elasticity. There are three methods. One is percentage method, another is total expenditure method, and third is geometric method. So what we understand actually from 11th class, there are 2 units are required here for CUET preparations. Unit 1 talk about the introduction of microeconomics, where we have to study what is the microeconomics, next central problem of economics. Unit 2 deal with consumer behavior and demand. Consumer behavior and demand. Unit 2 deal with consumer behavior and demand. Consumer behavior is what? That is consumer equilibrium, where we have to understand meaning of the consumer equilibrium, how consumer can attain equilibrium through utility approach, and in case of one commodity and in case of two commodity. But you remember here one thing, there is no mention about indifference curve approach. But sometimes it is seen that many questions also coming from this indifference curve chapter. So you have to follow this chapter also. It does not mean that we need not to follow the indifference curve as because the chapter is not mentioned in the syllabus. But in reality, sometimes questions are asked from the chapters of indifference curve also. So that is why we have to understand the consumer equilibrium as per the indifference curve approach also. Now come to the second year 12. From 12 area, what questions are coming? From 12, that is introduction to macroeconomics. Introduction to macroeconomics. What is the exact syllabus of introduction to macroeconomics? Here, after unit 2, we will start from unit 3. As because there are 2 units, 1 and 2, which are exactly coming from the 11th standards, where we have to follow the introduction to macroeconomics and what is macroeconomics and what are the central problem of economics. Second unit already we have understood the consumer behavior as well as demand curve. Consumer behavior, in respect of consumer behavior, we have to understand meaning of consumer equilibrium with the aid of Marshall utility approach, but there is no mention about indifference curve, but that is why you must be serious in respect of this chapter also, indifference curve, as because many questions are supposed to be asked from indifference curve chapter also. And next is demand. So we will start unit 3 for the macroeconomics. Unit 3, national income and related aggregates. National income and related aggregates. Related aggregates. National income and related aggregates. Here we need only basic concept. Basic concept. Here we need only basic concept and measurement. So here we have to understand the different methodology with the help of which we can measure the national income. That is how to measure the national income. So here there are some subhead is there. What are this? Macroeconomics meaning. Macroeconomics meaning. Macroeconomics meaning circular flow of income. Circular flow of income. Circular flow of income. Concept of GDP, GNP, NDP, NNP. But all these aggregates must be understood in terms of market price, at market price, and also at factor cost. Factor cost. So what we understand here, this is obvious. Our syllabus is clearly mentioned here. So all the aggregate, that is GDP, GNP, NDP, NNP, all these aggregates are to be understood in terms of market price as well as factor cost. Now come to the third subheading, measurement of national income. How measurement of national income? This part exactly tell us how the national income can be measured. There are different methodologies, there are different methods to measure the national income. There are value-added method, which is also called production method, income method, and expenditure method or outlay method. It is also called outlay method. Next, come to the unit 4. Unit 4. So unit 4 means determination of income and employment. In this chapter we will study determination of income and employment. Determination of income and employment. So here exactly we understand the theories of basically Keynes. Keynes theories basically are studied in unit 4. John Maynard Keynes. What are this? Aggregate demand, aggregate supply, subheads are, there are different subheads are given. Aggregate demand and aggregate supply, aggregate demand and aggregate supply and their components. That is, what are the different components of aggregate demand, such as consumption, investment, government expenditure, net export, etc. We will study every components elaborately. Propensity to consume, propensity to consume, propensity to consume and propensity to save, propensity to save, propensity to save. This one average and marginal, both are needed to understand. So what is this propensity to consume? That means one consumer, how, at what rate the saving is dying, at what rate the consumer saved out of his income. That is the propensity to save. So propensity to save or propensity to consume, both are to be understood, average as well as marginal. That is marginal propensity to consume, average propensity to consume. Next, meaning of involuntary. Meaning of involuntary, meaning of involuntary, unemployment, unemployment and full employment, full employment. So we have to understand here what is the full employment of the economy, and determination of income and employment, determination of income and employment, determination of income and employment, two-sector model, two-sector model. Here two-sector means consumption expenditures and investment expenditure. By taking two expenditure in aggregate demand, we will determine income and employment. Income and employment are to be determined by taking two sectors, means consumptions and investment. So we will suppose that aggregate demand is the sum of consumptions as well as investment. Concept of investment multiplier, concept of investment multiplier, concept of investment multiplier and its working, and its working. That is multiplier, it shows basically at what times income will increase due to the increase in investment. That is multiplier is nothing, it is at what rate, or you can say at what times income will increase due to the increase in investment. This one multiplier. So how it works, we have to understand here its working also. Problem of excess. Next, problem of excess and deficient demand. Deficient demand. That means when economy is lacking of deficient demand, how the economy passes through the recession. In order to get rid of from this recession, what the policies are to be exercised. Here we have to understand all these facts. Measures to correct, measures to correct, measures to correct excess and deficient demand. Excess, that is, if the economy is suffering from excess demand or the economy is suffering from deficient demand, what measures are to be adopted in order to get rid of from all these problems. So this one, ability, different measures are available. Availability of credit, availability of credit, availability of credit, change in government expenditure, change in government expenditure, etc. Next unit 5. This unit deal basically money and banking. Money and banking. Now you see, what are the subheading of this unit? Money, that is meaning. What is meaning? Evolution. Evolution and function. So, what are the function of money? Meaning, central bank. Central bank. Meaning and function. Meaning and function. Meaning and function. Commercial banks. Commercial banks. Here we have to understand meaning, commercial bank, meaning and functions. And function. Next, government budget, unit 6, government budget. How the budget is prepared and the economy. That is, how budget impact the entire economy. Here, government budget, subhead, government budget, meaning and its components, meaning and its components. That is, different components of budgets are there. Capital budget, revenue budget, similarly revenue receipt, revenue expenditure, capital receipt, capital expenditure. We must know about all the definition of all the components of budgets. Next, objectives of government budgets. Objectives of government budget. That is, we must understand what is the government budgets. Now you see objectives. Government basically collect taxes from richer section of the people of our society and spend on unprivileged section of the society, unprivileged section of our society. By doing that, government can enhance the standard of life of the unprivileged sections. Government will spend their collecting tax revenue on medical health facility, education facility, because of for the purpose of enhancement of their standard of living. This is how we understand your objectives. Next, classification of receipt. Classification of receipts. Classification of receipt such as revenue receipt, and capital. Classification of expenditures. Classification of expenditure. Classification of expenditure. What do we understand here? Classification of expenditure, like revenue expenditure, capital expenditure. Now, revenue receipt. Exactly what is the revenue receipt we will understand. The receipt which neither create the liabilities of the government nor reduce the assets of the government, but by the capital receipt of the government either create liabilities or it may reduce the assets volume. You can quote the example of revenue receipt like tax collection, non-tax collection. Capital receipt of the government, you can take the example such as borrowing. When government do borrow, it will create the liabilities. So that is why we can say the capital receipt are those receipts which either create the liabilities of the government or it may reduce the assets of the government. So this is how we have to understand here. Plan expenditure, non-plan expenditure, plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure, non-plan expenditure, plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure, development and non-development expenditure, development and non-development expenditures. Next come balance budget. Next heading, balance budget. Balance budget, surplus budget, surplus budgets and deficit budget. Deficit budget, balance budget, surplus budget, balance budget, deficit budget, meaning and implications. Meaning and implication. Here you understand implication, that is how the deficit budget will impact on the economy. When government practice huge deficit every year, year by year, inflations will occur. So this is the impact on the economy. So government practice deficit budget, so impact in the form of inflations comes on the entire economy. So the implication, this is how we understand the implications of deficit budget. Measure to curtail different deficit. So what are the measures? There are some measures we need to adopt to curtail different deficits. Different deficits. That is, we have to understand different measures for the economy to curtail the expenditures. Next, Unit 7. Unit 7. Unit 7. This unit deals with balance of payment. Balance of payment. Balance of payment. This unit deals with balance of payment. That is, under this unit, there are subhead foreign exchange rate, foreign exchange rate, foreign exchange rate, meaning it may be flexible. Foreign exchange rate may be flexible or fixed. Merits, demerits. Demerits. What are the merits of flexible system or demerits of flexible system? Determinations. Determination through demand and supply. Through demand and supply. That is, how the exchange rate is determined by the market forces of demand and supply. Now, Indian economic development. Next, come to Indian economic development. This is another important area from where questions are supposed to be asked in your CUET exams. So here continue the unit 7 and unit 8. Development experience. Development experience. Development experience. We understand from 1947 to 1990. And economic reforms. Economic reforms in 1991. So there are two parts exactly. One part we have to study in between 1947 to 1990 of about Indian economy. How the Indian economy experienced his development during this time period. After 1991 or after 1991, that is LPG. LPG, reform means LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalizations, how the development is experienced. So here a brief introduction, there is subhead is given here. A brief introduction, we understand here a brief introduction of the state of Indian economy, of the state of the Indian economy, state of Indian economy on the eve of the independence, on the eve of independence, on the eve of independence, Indian economic system, Indian economic system and common goals, what are the goals? Common goals of 5-year planning. 5-year planning. This is one part. Another important part under the same unit, main features, problem and policies, of agriculture, institutional aspect, and new agricultural strategy, new agricultural strategy. Next, we have to understand about industry. There are some industrial resolutions were taken. So, industry such as IPR, Industrial Policy Resolution 1956, 1956, SMALLS, SSI, rule and importance, small scale industries, rule and importance, and foreign trade. And next is foreign trade. Next unit 9. This unit current challenges. This unit deal with current challenges facing India is facing the Indian economy. What are the current challenges? Such as poverty, absolute and relative poverty, absolute and relative poverty. Relative poverty basically shows the inequality in income in our society. So we have to understand very properly what is absolute poverty, what is relative poverty, main programs of poverty, main programs of poverty. That is, we have to understand different programs that Government of India adopted for eradicating poverty. Poverty programs for poverty alleviation. You can write for poverty alleviation. Poverty alleviation or eradication poverty alleviations. Poverty alleviations. Next, a critical assessment. Critical assessment we have human capital. Next, human capital formation. Human capital formation. Here we understand human capital. How many people become resource? How many people become resource? Rule of human capital. Rule of human capital. Rule of human capital in economic development. Economic development. So, next, rural development. Rural development, key issues. What are the key issues? We have to study credit and marketing. Credit and marketing. We have to understand credit facility marketing, rule of cooperatives. Rule of cooperatives. Rule of cooperatives, agricultural diversification. Agricultural diversification. Agricultural diversification. Next, we understand about employment, growth and changes in work, growth and changes in work, workforce participation, workforce participation, rate, informal and informal sector, formal and informal sectors, problems and policies, problem and policies, problems and policies, infrastructure, infrastructure, meaning and type, meaning and type, case studies. There are some cases we have to study to understand exact scenario of infrastructure. That is why case studies here. Health policies, problems, health problems, health problems and policies, a critical assessment, a critical assessment. Here we understand critical assessment. Next, sustainable development, sustainable development. From here, there are 2 or 4 numbers of questions come from this chapter. Meaning, first we have to understand what is the meaning of sustainable development, effect of economic development, effect of economic development, effect of economic development on resources and environment, on resources and environment, including global warming, including global warming. यहाँ पर ग्लोबल वार्मिंग भी पढ़ना है. So next, last unit 10. This is 10 numbers of units are required. Development experience of India. Development experience of India. Here there are sub-heading also. A comparison with neighbor countries. A comparison with neighbor countries. With neighbor country or neighbor nations. Such as India, Pakistan, India, Pakistan, India, China, India and China. Next issue, there are some issues such as economic growth, population, sectoral development, different sectoral development, that is development of all sectors, sectoral development and human development indicators and human development indicators. Human development indicators like HDI, Human Development Index, Hunger Index, etc. All such index we have to understand, as because questions are supposed to be come from this area also. So this is all about the syllabus, CUET, undergraduate.